You're someone with a vision for your practice, for your side hustle, and for your personal journey. But when it comes to establishing your path on how to get to where you want to be with your practice, things get a little messy. You're also someone who'd prefer to go in person instead of to groups and listening to everyone else's story. To me, it sounds like you could benefit from one-on-one consulting with our experienced practice of the practice consultants. From $5.95 a month and up, you can work with a consultant that will give you more direction and practical tried and tested tips matched to you and your goals. For more information, visit practiceofthepractice.com/apply. Again, that's practiceofthepractice.com/apply. This is the Practice of the Practice podcast with Joe Sanok, session number 1295. I'm Joe Sanok, your host, and welcome to the Practice of the Practice podcast. We are so excited to help you build a thriving private practice that you absolutely love. And we're doing this through helping you learn the business side of running a private practice, doing the operations, the marketing, all the things that we never learn in graduate school. But also, we want you to love it. We want you to be curious. We want you to just show up in your business and say, oh my word, I can't believe this is my life. I can't believe I get to help people have access to mental health. I can't believe that I'm hiring people and giving people jobs and impacting my community and the mental health crisis in America. And, speaking of the mental health crisis in America, we have been talking to all sorts of people that can help us think through that. Earlier we talked to, back in episode 1280, retired Senator Debbie Stabenow was on here. We had the former APA president talking about if the United States was a client, how would we think through that? I remember she said, we would not say the quiet things out loud was one of her big things she said. So we've been going into all sorts of social issues as well. To me, this is so important to do when we live in a climate where there's fear, where there's just misunderstanding, where there's people that maybe we think differently and we aren't having conversations. To me, it's so important for us on this podcast to dig into this and to just amplify voices that maybe aren't being amplified. And that's why I'm so excited today, because we have Dakarai, who is an author, activist, and U.S. Senate candidate from Alabama, whose personal story of wrongful arrest has ignited a campaign of justice and accountability for American law enforcement. In April of 2024, Dakarai was arrested in Michigan on suspicion of driving under the influence, despite passing all sobriety tests and testing negative for drugs and alcohol. What followed was a months-long fight for transparency and civil rights that culminated in a $10 million lawsuit against the Michigan State Police and ultimately a run for the U.S. Senate. A former journalist and communications strategist, Dakarai has become a leading advocate for motorists' rights, police transparency, and reforming qualified immunity. His recently released memoir, Don't Flush: From a False Arrest to a Political Awakening, chronicles how one night in jail became the catalyst for a larger mission to protect citizens from systemic abuse and expand civil liberties for all Americans. Dakarai, welcome to the Practice the Practice podcast.
Thank you, Joe. I appreciate that introduction. It's exciting to be here.
Oh, man. Well, I'm sorry our Michigan State Police being here in Michigan did that. Let's start there. What happened in April 2024? Take us back to that night.
Gosh, well, you got it, Joe. I was just driving through Southwest Michigan, Twin Cities, Benton Harbor area, and I was apprehended by the state police and subjected to 7 sobriety tests in the cold and gaslit the whole night, told that I had failed the test, that I smelled of alcohol, and ultimately tested negative in handcuffs at a local hospital, was still jailed that night, and then was accused of trafficking drugs into the jailhouse by way of ingestion and forced to use the restroom publicly in front of the booking officers as well as the troopers. And I am still fighting for justice from that night.
Wow. What does fighting for justice look like for you right now?
It's been many steps. So it started with filing the grievance internally with the state police. And of course, that internal investigation was a sham, and advocating all the way up to Governor Whitmer's office. Um, advocating to Joey Andrews, my state representative, when I lived in Michigan. And at the end of the day, no one has advocated for me.
Mm,
Even with body cam evidence showing the attempted planning of drugs and the harassment that night and the racial discrimination, profiling, and homophobic attacks, no one has advocated for me.
mm.
So our final recourse is suing civilly. That case was thrown out by the lower court due to qualified immunity. And now we're back on with the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals.
Mhm. Now, I know that you've mentioned the trooper using homophobic language during your arrest. Um, Tell me about your thoughts on masculinity, authority, power, prejudice, all that coming out during that arrest.
It's so complex because people immediately jump at my story and say, oh, it's white cops and they're the problem. And I think we have a systemic problem with policing in general
Mm,
across the country. So that's one of the first things because it was a black cop and a white cop that approached me with the animus. In fact, they were making fun of my name before I even interacted with them face to face, and that was caught on camera by both troopers. And when I think about masculinity, I this trooper, George Kenya, clearly has something against gay people and trans people and women. So I don't know if that is endemic to that type of work or just his personal experience. But we did find, gosh, dozens of offensive posts on Twitter before he deleted his account.
wow. I mean, people experience all sorts of things in life that are traumatic and they don't take action. What for you motivated not just you taking action with, grievances in the state and lawsuits, but then to even say I'm gonna run for US Senate. That's a big jump for a lot of people. Like how did you decide to make that jump?
Oh, well, the foundation is 20 years of service to my community. So when I moved to New York, I graduated from school here in University of Alabama, moved to New York and built a career in corporate America. But I really found my calling through advocating for homeless youth, LGBT youth, working on harm reduction. So I've been doing that work for the last 20 years, and that's the foundation. And I just kind of realized I had spent my whole career advocating for these policies and, lobbying for the funding. And I thought about it, why not be the power to write the laws and to give out the funding, right? Like that's literally
Mm,
what it is. So it's kind of getting on the other side of the curtain. And when I just saw how broken the criminal justice system is, even with all the evidence I had, and no matter what, like let's say I had actually been doing something inappropriate or illegal, I was still due process. And I didn't get that, even as a completely innocent person.
mm.
So I just realized how broken it was, and I had to really just think about how can I write the laws that make the situation better for everybody.
Yeah, I mean, what do you think police reform looks like? If we're genuinely saying like let's reshape the system, because of course there's people defenders of police that are going to say, well, we can't just have a lawless society, and there's going to be other people that say, well, there's been the whole formation of police and FBI was from racist background, and there's so much nuance to it. Like, how do you simplify that down to something that could actually be change that happens?
I've created a simple outline of the law I call the Motorist Bill of Rights, and it's on my website, DakariLarriett.com. And it really just outlines how we should interact with the police. What is probable cause? We need to agree upon that federally because I actually lived in Alabama at the time of this attack, right?
Mm,
I was just driving through the state. And then after a trooper or an officer stops you, what tests can they do to truly prove scientifically sobriety or not? I learned later that the seven tests I ultimately had to jump through could go any other way, right? Depending upon, do I have a neurological disorder? Do I not know how to count, right? Like so many different things could determine the results. And then finally, it's the accountability. So all of these police forces now have body cam and dash cam, but they're weaponizing it against us, the public. I want to put specific guidelines in place that say this information needs to be uploaded to a neutral third party cloud, and it needs to be released to the principal within 24 hours without redactions, without cost. In my case, I spent $600 trying to get body cam, and it's been edited, it's been redacted, and then shared with the judge, who then ultimately considered it evidence and then dismissed my case.
Mm. Now, I'm just thinking through when someone's publicly humiliated and things, happen where you feel like justice isn't served. How how did you navigate that tension between kind of your personal healing, and sometimes people just kind of clam up and they're like, I'm just going to go do my own healing from this. I'm going to move on. And this is sort of similar to my other question, and going public with that story.
Mhm.
Like, did you take time to think through that? Was it just like, I have to do this? Like, it just called you to talk, to go public? Like, what did that look like?
Well, because I had to fight for 5.5 months for the body cam, there was this period where it was deeply private. And that was kind of the period where it was really my therapist and me and family, of course, talking through it. And then I got the body and dash cam, and I decided I can't keep this private.
Mm,
And I shared it onto my YouTube channel. And that's when the video went viral, and it just started this whole groundswell of support. And it's interesting, the real need for psychological support came from seeing the video and how close I came to potentially having a drug charge.
mm.
That was really what I later was diagnosed with PTSD. That's what triggered it, seeing the video, not the night itself.
What do you think people don't understand that haven't been in situations like this?
Gosh, the powerlessness. And, you know, I've been told don't look at the comments, but I have to look at the comments. And I would say 98 out of 100 are going to be supportive of me if they take the 5 minutes to look at the video. There's always that person that says, "Oh, you were doing something suspicious, or you should have just complied," or these types of things that are very deferential to the police. But people just don't realize how frightening it is, particularly for Black people in those situations. So, in that moment, my friend and I, we thought we were going to be murdered.
Mm.
And I don't know if most Americans feel that way when they're stopped by the police. They may be annoyed, but do they think they're going to get murdered? And gosh, a year after the incident, I was talking to my buddy about his thoughts for the night. And he said he was so terrified. He's like biting his nails. You can see that somewhat on the video. He almost ran from the vehicle.
Mm.
And that would have been the end of us. They would have said that we escalated, we, brandished a gun or something. That would have been the end of us.
It's a lot.
Hmm.
I mean, it's something that, I think that when things like this go national, it's similar to, I think, gun violence, that it happens so often that we've just become this toad in the boiling water that doesn't jump
Hmm.
out, that it doesn't shock us anymore.
Yeah.
How do we fight back that lack of outrage, that lack of, because, like, it's one thing when Rosa Parks and there wasn't like video cameras on every single incident, and this one moment escalates things, but it happens so often now, and we're just flooded with so many bad things. Like, I don't even know what my question is. I think it's more of just noticing that
Yeah.
we're just have an onslaught of terrible things, and so then when things happen like this, it's so hard to know how to help, because there's five more tomorrow. And so it's like what do
Yeah.
we do in that situation?
You really have to pick and choose what battles you fight. And in my case, that's the other dynamic that I have to deal with. This was very traumatic for me and my friend, but at the end of the day, I'm alive and well now. And so many other, mostly Black folks, have been killed in these types of situations and harmed since then. So we've moved on to the next person who's been murdered, right? So you're right. It's about us figuring out and getting aligned on the issue overall and just not giving up. We've
Hmm.
got to fight for this. And that's why I've started to author legislation.
If you're growing a group practice, you know how much time and energy it takes to keep your clinicians licensed in multiple states and keep up with renewals and CE requirements. That's where a Finer Framework comes in, your trusted partner for mental health licensure. A Finer Framework partners with mental health group practice owners to handle multi-state licensing, license renewals, and track continuing education so you and your team can stay focused on serving clients, not buried in paperwork. Whether you're onboarding new hires, expanding your telehealth reach, or planning to grow into new states, they make the entire licensing process smooth and stress-free. Join the hundreds of clinicians that already trust a Finer Framework to save time and headaches. Visit afinerframework.org/Joe Sanok today to learn more. That's afinerframework.org/Joe Sanok. Licensing support made simple. I think that, even just looking at this, it's like you can identify these police officers' names. You can get body cam footage. Now with the state of policing, even, in a year past this happening, to have masked individuals and National Guard and ICE and all of that. Like, how do you think through the current state of the American psyche, particularly between the relationship between like citizens and power, between trust and fear, like the American psyche with what's happening now? How do you think through that?
It's a real tipping point because here in Alabama, the legislator voted to expand qualified immunity just a couple months ago. So it's going to be as bad as it is for me with this situation up in Michigan, zero accountability. And I think, again, people just feel helpless at this point. And we've got to just continue showing up and proving that there are more of us that want to see things improve, want to see transparency, want to see fairness. And it starts from like no King's Days and then it continues. And so I've started to see some messaging around, well, what's next? I read something about protesting in France and they said, we don't do it right here in America, right? Like they don't stop until they get what they want.
Yeah.
So we've got to continue to turn up the heat here.
Hmm. I'm wondering personally what keeps you grounded, because for me, and this is a question that in some shape or form I've asked most of the guests when we're talking more about these kind of things. On one hand, there's taking in the news, the information to be an educated citizen. And on the other side, there's just like the overwhelm of taking in the news where you just feel like there's just so much that you feel like I just need a break from it. Like, how do you find that balance personally?
You're right. It's especially with this administration, every day it's like whack-a-mole, right? It's about determining what really matters to you. So, for example, in the last week, right, because we have so much content to work on, I'm so 100% focused on criminal justice. It's my personal experience. I know it well, and it's very relevant for my state. I'm also very concerned around the basic, access to food, right? So SNAP. There's so many other stories I could focus on the ballroom, right? The boat situation that's happening in South America. So it's about really lasering into what you know and what you can drive and relying upon those who have expertise in those other areas to focus on that. Because if you try to get too wide, that's how we're going to fail, I think.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And I think Debbie also, Senator Stabenow said, like, kind of pick your lane and
Yeah,
just go hard there, because we
yeah.
can't do it all. And then we just get overwhelmed and stuck. What
And you're
habits,
responding. You're
yeah,
responding. You're just responding.
what personal habits do you have that help you feel mentally well, strong? Like, I mean, is it green smoothies? Is it, going for a walk? Is it like, calling your mom every day? Like, what are the things you personally just find that help you stay focused? Because I think whether you've been through trauma or not, with everything going on in the world, it's sometimes hard to bring your best self into the world to do good work. And so, like, what helps Dakarai be his
Mhm.
best self?
I was just having this conversation with a friend this morning. There is nothing like a good workout. And so that was how I started my day at like 6 in the morning. And yes, smoothies as well. But yeah, it's that taking that time for yourself. I especially do like starting the day with physical activity, especially because it's so early. You kind of have a lot of it to yourself, a lot of the space and quiet to yourself. And those routines, they're so important.
Mm, mm. So we have a ton of therapists. Most of the people listening are therapists. I want to kind of put our clinical hats on together to say, what would you hope that they would either know or understand to make their sessions even more safe? So for safe for people that have been through trauma, safe for individuals of color, to safe
Mhm.
for the LGBTQ community, like whatever the domain, what would you hope therapists move towards to just create more safety in their sessions?
Wow. Just be open minded and realize that you could literally be next door neighbors to someone, but their experience of life can be so dramatically different. And again, going back to my traffic stop, so I made a very intentional stop in a well lit area, and the trooper decided to walk me into a dark alley adjacent to that. And I'm literally thinking, like, this is a death march, right? So those experiences, I'm guessing, are not common. They're not common. So you've got to just be open minded and really think through how other people experience the world and trauma.
What do you think the role is of individual learning for clinicians, especially those that maybe don't even recognize their own power or privilege? I was raised in northern
Mhm.
Michigan in Traverse City, in an affluent area, went to private Catholic school. I'm a white guy, went to a decent college, and it took me a long time to really understand just the difference of you and I, even at a traffic stop.
Mhm.
Um, what would you hope that therapists do in regards to their own work, especially if they're people that they want to do the work, but maybe they also don't want to always have to go to their black friends and be like, teach me. Like, it's like where should we send them? Like, what should we do to like encourage people? They're like, I know I want to grow, and
Yeah.
I also don't want to just have to rely on my friends to teach me. Like, what kind of things would you recommend that people do to really put in more work into their own privilege, their own way of
Mhm.
helping the world? They're just using their power in a way that helps better the world.
Oh, we have so much access now to media. So right now I'm reading Black AF History, which is very Black centric telling of American history. So those are great resources. And again, just stepping outside of yourself. I read period pieces from Europe, right? So completely different from my day to day life. And everyone has access to that. Documentaries are amazing. So the Alabama Solution is probably how we connected, Joe. That documentary speaks to our prison system. I've never been in a prison before. I've been in a jailhouse. So same thing. It has expanded my understanding of just how bad the criminal justice system is here in Alabama.
Mm. Yeah, tell us also about your recent memoir,
Mhm.
"Don't Flush." Tell
Yeah.
us tell us more about that.
Well, the name is derived from the experience in the jailhouse, and just the very shocking experience, um, and command from Trooper George Kenya. And it really started as my interrogatory. So I had to write a written kind of testimony around what happened to me that night and why I believe that my rights were violated, my civil rights were violated. And it started to expand and became part of my therapy as well, just writing and getting the whole experience down on paper. And then I started thinking about and having conversations with my grandmother and her journey through the civil rights movement here in Birmingham.
Mm.
And I started to intersperse those stories and how stories that she taught me and told me about growing up here um, gave me strength to get through my experiences. And I especially juxtapose a story when she and my grandfather were stopped by the KKK in 1957, and just how similar it was to my interaction in 2024 in Michigan. So that's the thrust of the book. It's my recounting of the night, aided by body cam and the experience of my friend. And then what do we do with that? Like, how do we move past this? What policies can we create together to ensure that no one else goes through this type of thing again?
Mm.
And then the decision to run.
Yeah. Yeah. So what are you learning through running for Congress?
Wow, it's networking all
Mm.
day long, and countrywide too. That's the other interesting thing. You say I'm running for U.S. Senate for Alabama, but I spent so much time today talking to people from California because that's where the money is, right? So,
Right.
um, so that's very interesting. Just how national our politics truly are, especially from a fundraising perspective. I'll be having a fundraising event in Washington, D.C. coming up pretty soon in the next month or so. So it's just networking, building that capital of connections and money. And then way down the line, I mean, more than a year from now is the general election. So that the build up to it is really kind of eye opening.
Mm. Yeah, I'm sure you're learning all sorts of things behind the scenes in doing this. Well, Dakarai, the last question I always ask is if every private practitioner in the world were listening right now, what would you want them to know?
Gosh, that we all have a unique story. Be curious about that, but also be patient. Some of us are hesitant to tell our deepest stories. So be curious and be patient.
Mm. So awesome. If people want to follow your work, they want to get your book, where should we send them?
Check out DakariLarriett.com. So that is our campaign site. And then all of our social media is Dakari Larriett for Senate. And we are looking for volunteers, phone bankers, donations, anything you can do to help us get this out. It truly is a national campaign.
Mm. Dakarai Larriett, make sure you check him out. We'll have links in the show notes as well. Thank you so much for being on the Practice of the Practice podcast.
Thank you so much, Joe. Had a great time.
You know, it's shows like this that, and just hearing people take their personal story and do something with it. We can consume the podcast, which is great. I'm glad you listen. I'm glad you support our sponsors and you're building your practice. But, just like if we eat and eat and eat and then we never work out or do anything with that energy, it doesn't actually serve a purpose. So yes, you're consuming information here, but we've got to take action. So we all have experiences that motivate us to do something that we either choose to do or we choose not to do. I want to encourage you to think about something from your life that's a lane that you could care about. It could be in politics, it could be locally, it could be in a lot of different ways. My mom, for example, has served on the board of our local homeless shelter for probably 20 years. She just quietly takes care of the medical needs of the homeless in northern Michigan. She's someone that, when someone stopped running the kitchen, she makes sure the kitchen is clean and gets volunteers to keep the kitchen clean and feed the people. And so there's these lanes that we pick. It could just be quietly serving the homeless in your community. It could be having a couple of sessions per week that are for sliding fee scale and working with something like Open Path Collective to automate that. It could be that you just volunteer at your kid's school and you're in that busy parenting phase and you just show up as a parent. Whatever it is, pick your lane and double down on that. Over and over as I interview people, just hearing that idea that, yes, we can be overwhelmed by everything that's happening right now, But what we can do, instead of just shutting down, is saying, what can I do for myself and for my neighborhood to make that a stronger connection? Even conversations with our neighbors. Just the other day, I was talking to my neighbor who we had very different political signs in our front yard, but we let each other borrow rakes, let each other use things back and forth, and we're still connected as humans. So I want to encourage you, wherever you land politically, emotionally, on all of this, I want you to think about what you can do to connect with your neighbor and to connect in a deeper way. We couldn't also do this show without our awesome sponsors. A Finer Framework is our sponsor today. They are a trusted partner for mental health licensure. When you're onboarding new hires into your practice, they can help you get into new states and make sure the licensing process is super smooth and stress-free. Head on over to afinerframework.org/Joe Sanok today to learn more. Hundreds of clinicians have already trusted a Finer Framework to save time and headaches. Again, that's afinerframework.org/Joe Sanok to help with licensing support that's made simple. Thank you so much for letting me into your ears and into your brain. Have a great day. I'll talk to you soon. Special thanks to the band Silence is Sexy for that intro music, and this podcast is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information in regard to the subject matter covered. It is given with the understanding that neither the host, the producers, the publishers, or guests are rendering legal, accounting, clinical, or other professional information. If you want a professional, you should find one.